I want to talk on one of the wrong ways we administer food to our snails that causes ant invasion, introduction of pests, parasites, and diseases, and can harm our snails generally. If you take a closer look at the screen, you will notice that the snails are actually feeding on some cucumbers that are placed on their substrate. When I say substrate, I mean the soil. Snail substrate is actually any surface on which the snails carry out their activities. So in this picture, the substrate here is the soil. Now you would wonder, what is wrong here? After all, the snails are actually feeding on one of their favorite food, which is the cucumber. Moreover, the cucumber was actually cut in smaller bits to help the snails feed on it easily. So what is the problem? Now listen up so that you can actually know what the problem is with this feeding method that was administered here. Okay, it is not ideal for you to introduce food of any kind to your snails by placing the food directly on the substrate. Be it their natural food like the vegetables or the fruits, or be it the compounded feed, you must ensure that when you're giving your snails their food, let the food be placed in the appropriate feeding tray. Yes, this is very, very important. So with the appropriate feeding tray, you can actually place the feeding trays in different sectors. If that's the issue, if that's the problem, if you think that, okay, because you want all of the snails to feed well, so that is why you just distribute the food on all corners or all areas of the substrate, you'll be making a mistake there. What you need to do is to just get appropriate feeding trays for them. Depending on the size of the snail pen, that is what will determine the number of feeding trays. So you're to just place these feeding trays in strategic positions where the snails will go by themselves to eat. They can actually eat directly from those feeding trays. So you don't have to place their food directly on the substrate. Okay, one would wonder, what happens or what will happen if you feed your snails by placing their food directly on the substrate? What is the detriment that it can cause to the snails? Or how can it introduce ants? How can it lead to attack of pests, parasites, and even diseases? And how can it harm these snails? Now listen up. When you place their food directly on the substrate, a lot of food particles will be left over on the substrate. That is after the snails finish eating. Now these food particles will introduce flies. They will decompose and bring about ant invasion. Before you know, pests will invade, parasites will invade. Before long, the snails will become sick and some might die. So you see, it is not appropriate. But when you use feeding trays, an appropriate one, if you do not know the appropriate trays or appropriate tray to use in feeding your snails, then slide into my DM on WhatsApp, because it is on WhatsApp that you can actually reach us faster so that we can talk further on how you can do training on snail farming, be it the online or offline, or talk about how you can get our detailed modules and our comprehensive ebook. Okay, back to what I was saying. When you use the appropriate feeding trays for the snails will not have issues coming to eat from them. When they are ready to eat, when the time is ready or when it is the right time for them to eat, they will go to those trays and eat. So what happens is that even after eating, the leftover will remain in the tray. And even if there will be any droppings, because definitely there would be, the droppings on the substrate won't be much. So when you come, it will be easier for you to excavate or to remove those food droppings that will just be at the surface of the substrate. So with that, it helps to reduce the rate at which flies will invade your snail pen, the rate at which ants will invade, and even the rate at which there will be attack of pests, parasites, and diseases. And as such, your snails will not easily die. Okay? So please always make sure that you use the right feeding tray to introduce food to your snails. Don't ever give your snails food by placing their food directly on their substrate. I believe you have learned something new today. Yes, I know. So if you want to keep getting enlightening teachings on the right way to farm snails, then do well to connect with us on YouTube, on TikTok, on Facebook, and on Instagram at Animal Farming with Suraj. If you prefer to use email, you can also do that. info@sorajglobalresources.com.ng. Then if you prefer to use the website, you can also reach out at www.sorajglobalresources.com.ng. Then for faster connection or to reach us quickly, you should do well to send us a direct message to our WhatsApp on this number 081 6353 7756. All right, see you next time.